back with another episode of the Big Money Stylist Podcast. What does Big Money Stylist stand for?
Well, it depends who you ask. Initially, it was... Wait, you said what does Big Money Stylist stand for?
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking BMS.
What does BMS stand for?
BMS can either stand for Big Money Stylist or Business Marketing and Sales.
Yeah, so I never thought of it that way, but I like it because like big money, I was always like big money.
Big money.
Yeah, it's
big money, big money.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's always the way I read it.
Like, yeah.
Well, now Warrior has Big Money Marketer, and I'm like,
puppy
interesting.
cats.
We really can't say it though, because we have the stack, and so we obviously borrow things from Warrior.
That's true.
We have no room to stand on that one.
Tell us what the point of this podcast is for those who are listening.
So I know last time we had really talked about 10 reasons of why you're not doing things, like how you're just kind of stuck. Today we want to talk about really 10 things of why your business could be stagnant. So not so much like, hey, you're lazy, you're not doing shit,
right.
But why has your business not moved forward? Why have you just felt stuck?
Right. Well, and you know what? I was actually listening to a Date Your Wife podcast, which is me and Garrett's podcast we do together. It was an old one. They played a repeat, but Garrett was like referencing, we were talking about like the hamster wheel. Like people think, oh my God, my business isn't moving forward and I'm working really hard. And I referenced like the hamster wheel. Actually, I'm like, well, it's like you're like running in a circle, but you think like, I don't have time and I'm working so hard. But if nothing's changing, then you're stagnant. I'd like you to consider that you're stagnant. If you're literally been doing the same thing for the last 5 years with the same prices, the same clients, literally the same thing, and your numbers are pretty damn close to the same, guess what? You're stagnant.
And even then, something I always say is that, yes, I know stagnant's a thing, but not really, because the world keeps moving forward. And if the world is moving forward and you're not, you're actually regressing. You're not even staying stagnant.
Yeah, so then it's like you're not even current. You're literally
you're
like
behind.
The world's moving forward and you're kind of falling behind because what was like the norm is now considered behind on pricing or whatever it is. So you're like, we'll see that in our industry. We're both hairstylists, and we'll see people that have been doing hair for 20 years and they haven't raised their prices in the last 10 years.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, man, you were like maybe making okay money or like sort of, but now like you're so behind. You're like, are you even making minimum wage after you pay all your costs? You know what I mean?
Probably not. And it kills me when I hear that some artists use like more holistic color, which I don't care if they use it, but it kills me when I hear that it's $15 a tube. $15 a tube of color for like the very like
then you better be charging more.
You're damn right you better be charging more. It's $15 a tube.
Did you know, because I was using hand-tied hair at my salon, and when hand-tied hair hasn't always been super trendy, and now it's pretty trendy. And when I first got it, I don't even want to say how much it was, but it was not very expensive.
Hefty amount.
No, it wasn't very much. Like when I first got it. No, like when I first started getting it, like I was making like a killing on marking up the hair. But as hand-tied hair prices kept increasing, I was guilty of like, oh, I'm already like doubling the price of the hair or whatever it is. Like, and I kept it the same for so long. And then not only that, but it was like high demand. So even websites that we try to order hair from, we couldn't get it at the same price. And I have a salon manager, and she was like doing the numbers, and she's like, so we are kind of giving clients hair at almost the same cost we're getting it for. And I'm like, oh my God. And I about like died. Yep. And so I was like, yeah, that's like my fault for not like knowing the numbers. But it happened like so quickly, like within like the last year that it, like the prices went up. And so when you see that, you have to address that with your clients. And I think people are like scared to do that. But I always tell people like my salon concierge, like when he's checking people out, if we have a price increase, I always tell him like, hey, if you need to tell them, hey, the hair is raised because our cost is raised. Like, it's not a big deal. And I like how Carlos said at the last quarterly event, he was like, your clients are a transaction. So the people that you're buying hair from, they consider you a transaction. If you're buying holistic color, they consider you a transaction. So we have to treat our clients the same way, in the sense that, yeah, we love our clients, but it's still a business deal. And if your prices increase, then you have to raise your prices.
Well, and I think that's part of the problem inside of doing hair, because hair is art and hair is so subjective, but we are touching another human. We're hearing about their family, their husbands, their kids, their wives, their lives, their pets, their problems, their wins, their losses. We hear so much that we form this emotional bond and connection. But I mean, I hate to break it to you, sometimes it's kind of only in your head and it doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say I genuinely like working on my clients, but at the same time,
I'm not saying I don't like my clients. I'm saying we tend to view them like, oh, they're my friend.
Yeah,
we're best friends.
Well, totally. And I've learned real quick too, because there's clients that have like been, I felt like were like super loyal, never go to anybody else, and then ended up going to somebody else, and I'm like, oh, and then I was like, it just goes to show they went to somebody that was less expensive. I was a business transaction for them. And it no longer financially fit in their budget or what they were willing to spend on hair, so they decided to go to somebody else at a lesser price. And they may have been clients for like 4 or 5 years. And so you better believe that clients think of you as a business transaction. You have to think of them as a business transaction.
And I feel like really that falls into the first thing that we want to talk about, which was client communication.
Yes.
And actually being open with your clients and talking to them. And when we say that, we don't mean like, hi, Sally. So my price used to be this, but then they raised it for me for this amount. But if I charge you that amount, then I can't do da-da-da-da. Like, it's not that. It's just being like, hey, Sally, thank you so much. Yeah. Just letting you know prices are going up.
Being an educator, and especially like with Big Money Stylists, of course, we touch on like business and marketing and all that kind of things. And I'm shocked with the amount of questions I get on like, but how do I change my prices, or how do I go about it? And like stylists are literally like so scared to have really good client communication. And so I just if you go into that mind frame of like, it's business, and you don't need to be like come up with a million excuses or whatever it is. You're like, hi, my cost increased, and so this is going to be my new pricing affected here. Like, and give them a chance to go to somebody else. Be like, if that doesn't work for you, no worries, let me know, and I can refer you to another stylist. Like, you don't have to be weird about it.
Well, and you don't have to take it personally. It's if they choose to leave, it's not them saying, I hate you, I don't like you, you're dead to me. It's just like, hey, thank you for, doing my hair for X amount of years. Unfortunately, I can't afford it, or I'm moving a little farther away.
Right.
We, as artists, we take it personally because our art is personal.
Right.
And we're always like, well, but I did a great job. How could you not want to stay with me forever?
You know what's so interesting, too? Like, we have, like this happens every now and again, and I'm sure for every stylist out there, sometimes you get a client where it just ends up not being a good fit. Maybe they just like they don't, like, I've had clients who like literally don't have enough density, and I'm like, I can't put that much hair in your hair. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not willing to put my name on it. Or people that are like, hey, I want it to be really, really blonde, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to fry your hair off. And so even having communication as far as like there's making the client happy, but there's also being like, hey, you know what? This is what's going to be the outcome if we try to do that. And literally just like talking them through that. And I don't know why we get so scared to just like have a conversation of like, hey, and recently I had a client come into our salon, and she wanted more hair. And I flat out told her, I said, no, you have previous hair extension damage. Like, I won't do it. And I was like, so, we'll put these in, see if it holds up. Great. They weren't holding up. And at that point I was like, I wasn't weird about it. I just came up to her. I'm like, I'm sorry. I actually would recommend that you try something else. And really, I recommend that she take them out completely. Like, her hair had gotten
she
bad.
had even said that she'd been wearing extensions literally her entire life.
Yeah.
And before she came to us, whatever method she was at gave her like,
yeah, she had very little density. And that's the thing. And I don't want to put blame on the stylist or the client. However, there's a lack of communication there. And I told her, as like I was like kind of fixing, I'm like, I want you to know you don't have a ton of density. So I'm going to put like this amount of hair in and see how it holds up, and we'll see where it goes. Anyway, long story short, I ended up being like, hey, you know what? This is not a good fit. And we have a pretty strict like refund policy and things like that at my salon. But I ended up giving her 50% of her money back because I just felt like that was fair. And, and even though they come in, they sign contracts and everything, I was just like, hey, this isn't going to work. Like,
well, and you know what? She was really nice, too.
She was nice. And I wasn't
in
weird about it. I just was like, even when she came in and we like adjusted them, I was like, hey, how are you? And you could tell she felt awkward, but I didn't need to make it more awkward by being like, that girl doesn't like these. Like, it's fine.
Hey, it just didn't work. Like, that's all that it was. But I do like that she was super, super nice the entire time.
Yeah, she wasn't weird, and it's because I didn't make it weird.
For sure. So let's talk about the next thing. And this is something that we have preached and teached and talked about inside of BMS for so long, which is really initially why BMS was birthed, and it's being a slave behind the chair. So how can being a slave behind the chair actually keep you stagnant?
Well, I just think that being a slave sucks, like literally. Like
in general, it's not great.
It's not great. And it's funny because you'll have high-paid slaves and low-paid slaves.
We have, that kills me, by the way. We have artists who've gone through and they're like, I'm making no money, but I'm working 6 days a week. And then they start crushing it doing NBR and like incorporating the BMS way and everything we have. And I'm like, wait. You're still working 6 days a week. You're just making $40,000-$50,000 a month now. What the hell?
Right.
And they're like, I know. I went from being a cheap prostitute to like a high-paid escort.
I know.
I'm like, that's...
You're like, cool.
Are we celebrating this? Or I'm not really sure what's happening inside of that.
Which I get it. Like, the money can be kind of addicting, and it's hard to say no to people. And so I've always said, like, if you don't want to be a slave behind the chair, you have to set clear boundaries for yourself and, like, stick to them. And, like, when you get to this place where if you want to increase your prices, but you're not willing to take on any more time, then that's a good time to up your prices. You know what I mean? You're like, okay, well, my price went to here. And there's always room to do that. I think people literally just get so scared to say no to money.
Well, and not only that, I mean, consider this. If you are spending all of your time behind the chair, that means you're not actually being able to focus and have any time to focus on things in front of the chair, like advertising, marketing, your funnels, your applications. You have no time to put in play any systems and processes that will actually alleviate some of the stress you have.
Yes.
So you're back to that hamster wheel all over again.
And I learned that the hard way too. I was like, I cannot operate like booking appointments via text for an entire salon. I cannot operate without a salon manager. I cannot operate. Like, I was trying to be like almost kind of frugal and tight and like, but I was planning on running a successful business at the cost of running myself into the ground.
And then what the fuck happens when the owner of the salon and the creator of NBR is dying?
And then what happens is like, I'm a slave to my own salon. I'm like, I can't even like go back in days because I'm like the manager of my salon. I'm managing the receptionist. I'm managing the color. I'm managing the hair. I'm managing like this leaves me no time to step away from my salon. Like, I'm not just a slave to my clients behind the chair. I'm literally a slave to my entire processes. And so you have to be able to delegate your processes and train people that are in that place. And I think that was like a big learning thing for me last year. Like, I literally was like, yeah, hired you, check that off. And I didn't realize like I can't just like step out of that role yet. Like, I have to like teach them how I've been doing it, and we have to come up with a game plan in order for me to like kind of relax and still have the business produce, but not having to be a slave to my business.
Do you know what's so crazy? I just finished doing a Happy Stack. This was Monday, whatever day that was. I have no idea what day it is anymore. But it was actually on Crystal, the salon manager. Me saying that I've always had like an eye open inside of DKW because obviously it's important to BMS as well.
Right.
And that's always given me like just enough stress to be annoying because it's like, fuck, like where do I have to step in? How do I like just, it's so much. Yeah. And I've realized with Crystal now having like a salon manager, which I feel like that's not even a fair role. I swear she's like COO at this point because she does so much.
I know.
But having her inside of DKW and her and I talking so much because we like our offices are side by side that I have now been able to relax and be like, okay, I don't have to be as involved because I trust Crystal and Crystal's got it. Like she's so good at her job. And that even though I didn't hire her and she's doing a job that I, in all technicality, was not supposed to be doing, it's given me peace of mind to be able like, okay, DKW is in good hands. Yeah,
I think because you're the lead trainer, you know, for MBR and BMS, it's like you care about the salon succeeding as well because that's what we're educating our students on. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I love all of it.
Everybody, any stylist, they want to know whether it's a small boutique salon, whether they're salon managers or owners or whatever. Like, everybody wants to know how to have a successful salon, and so we have to make sure we have to like set the standard. And so it's if you're that business owner that's like running on the hamster wheel because you can't let go and you're taking too much, I want you to keep in mind that that's most likely not only keeping you a slave, but also very stagnant. So you need to start reaching out and finding people who fit those roles. You know, when last year when I was trying to put people in the role of salon manager, I was having hairstylists. I'm like, hey, if I pay you more, you want to be the salon manager? And that didn't work.
They're like, yeah, totally.
So I was like, okay, finally, it took me like 3 tries. And after the 3rd try of a hairstylist being a salon manager not working, I was like, fuck, why don't I just hire a manager? And like, if they do hair, great, but really I need somebody to manage. So I found a girl, Crystal, who she had already been managing a lot of stuff in another salon. And I was like, okay, great. I'm like, I want you to be behind the chair 1 day a week. Because I feel like artists take feedback to somebody who's like actually still doing hair. There's like more respect there. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Even I don't do a ton of hair. I'm in there 1 day a week. You're about to go down to 1 day a week. But I will never stop doing hair because I know when I've been to a class and we're like, oh, how many days a week do you work? And they're like, I don't work in the salon. I'm like,
then what are you training me on? Yeah. So there's like this balance, but just going back to that, like if you can't like delegate and train somebody, like I hire somebody for that role, you're going to be stagnant.
So then number 3. Let's talk about not knowing your real numbers.
Woo.
I love my numbers.
That's a kick in the face.
I love numbers. And I'm the first, and let me talk about this actually. This is going to go a little, okay, personal, but not personal.
I hate numbers really bad.
Oh, they're my favorite. So my accountant sent me an email a couple Fridays ago, and she's like, we got to talk, call me. And
you owe the government your life.
Oh, I owed, girl. I owed this year. And I sat there and I looked at the email and I was like, oh,
you
no.
You still love numbers?
I was like, yes. And I'll tell you why. So I'm looking at this sweating. I'm call Helene and I'm like, hi. And her literal response to me was, Ani, what the hell happened last year? I'm like, yeah, I did really well. Thank you. And so she's like, you cut hair, right? I was like, She goes, we've been laughing about this in the office. She goes, we're looking at your numbers, literally. And she goes, I told him, I'm like, guys, I think she does hair, which had me like,
that's so rude.
And I was sitting here, I'm like, that's hysterical, but I don't actually think you're supposed to be telling me that you're telling other people what I make, but I'm going to let that part go for now. But then she was like, okay, well, just so you know, this is what you owe the state of California. This is what you owe the IRS. And I went, like, oh.
Girl, you're just silly. Call me back in an hour.
Oh, no, I knew. Like, I had already done, like, some math, and I'm like, if I pay 35% in taxes, this is what I paid quarterly. I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm going to owe, which is fine. Yeah. I was raised to save money, so I wrote the biggest check I've ever written yesterday. I'll tell you about it later. But inside of that, I was like, oh, my God. Yeah. Literally, I had a moment of, I'm going to be poor. And then I'm like,
I think people don't realize if, like, you're a business entrepreneur or an owner, like, if you're W-2'd, like, you don't have to pay a huge chunk at the end of the year. But last year, you weren't W-2'd, or you were?
I was, but... last year I was not W-2. I was 1099.
That's why.
I was 1099 in BMS and in DKW. And because I didn't have my own salon, my deductions went from this amount to like a third of it. Yeah. So anyway, so I sat there and I was like, okay, so you're panicking because you heard this gigantor number, which, bleh. But then I'm like, okay, why don't you sit down, you crazy person? And I'm like, how much do I get paid? Because we get paid every 2 weeks because I'm W-2 now. I'm like, this is what I get paid from BMS. This is on average what I make at DKW. Okay, what are my actual bills? I went through and did the legitimate numbers because honestly, I don't even know what I pay in bills. It's just automatic draft at this point. And I went through and I looked at all my numbers and I'm like, why are you panicking? You're
fine.
You're more than perfectly fine. And after that, I was like, well, all right, I can pay this now. I'm perfectly fine. Like, I felt so much better. But that ease of mind for me came from doing numbers, which happens to so many business owners because they're like, you're one of two people. You're either like, I'm crushing it. I'm doing so good because you've never looked at numbers and little do you realize all of your money is going back into the salon, or hint, you're not actually making that much money.
I'm guilty of being that person. I'm like, I'm so awesome.
Nailing it.
We did so much last year, and then I find out like how much costs and taxes and like how much you actually took home, and I'm like, God, like it's still good, but I'm like, oh my God, like
the number drops very drastically. I'm very aware, but it's so crazy because that's what happens. You're either like, I'm fucking crushing it, and then turns out you're not, or you're like, oh my God, I'm doing terrible. This is the worst. What am I doing? And then when you look, you're like, damn it, I'm doing really well. Yeah. Which has actually happened so many times inside of BMS. I actually just got a message from one of our girls, and she's like, Ani, I've been feeling really down, like really, really down, thinking these past 3 months have been terrible. I'm not doing enough. I'm not seeing any results. She goes, so then I thought of you. She goes, and I thought, well, let me do my numbers. She goes, I pulled up my numbers from 2018. I pulled up my numbers from 2019. And per month, she's all, because she wasn't in BMS at that time last year, she's already making, I think it's another 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 per month. Oh, and she's like, I thought I was not crushing it. She's like, turns out I'm doing great.
I think that's what's so funny, specifically with hair extensions. Like, well, people will start to lose colors or cuts or whatever, but they don't factor in that they got like 4 new extension clients that month. So they base their success or their numbers on how busy they were. And so they're like, I don't know if I'm doing that great. And then they do the numbers and they're like, oh, I'm up $3,000, you know?
Well, shit. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's kind of the moment that I had to come to, even for myself, like when I had to pay that. But I love hearing that from artists, or them being like, I have felt like I was not doing well. But when I looked at the numbers and the actual facts, it was totally different. And feelings and facts are vehemently different, guys.
Yeah. We even had, like, at my own salon, we'll have situations where people are like, oh, I want more clients. And so one of the things that we had our artists do, we're like, okay, I want you to do your numbers, like, from, like, what you made last year. You know what I mean? Or what you made in the month of February last year, whatever it was before you came to DKW. And they would come to us and give us our numbers, and like 1 year later they had tripled those numbers. And I'm like, and you know what's so funny is you guys walk away with that cash. Like, it's not, you have zero expenses. I pay your assistants, I pay your color, I pay the salon managers, I pay the building, I pay everything. You walk home like that is the cash you make. I'm like, and the number you gave me a year ago, you bought your color, you paid for your assistant, you paid for your booth rent. I'm like, that's not even like a legit number. And so when I show them as a business owner, like, hey, like, it, all of a sudden they're like, oh, thank you. And there's a sense of like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, Katie texted me a couple weeks ago and she's like, hey, I just look, because we show our stylists like their numbers monthly and weekly. And she goes, oh my God, like, I just looked at my numbers last month, because we consolidated their schedules too, because they were complaining like they wanted more people. And I'm like, let's consolidate your schedules, because I don't think you're as busy as you think you are. And then she like sent me a text and she's like, holy shit, like, I just wanted to say I'm grateful and like thank you, like, looking at my numbers this last month. And I was like, oh, I feel like a proud parent. I was like, yeah.
We got them. We did it. Hallelujah.
So know your numbers.
So right after knowing your numbers, and this one is something we kind of talked about last week as well, but it's, you feel alone and you feel isolated and you're just kind of scared to start.
Yeah.
And I actually really want to touch on that one because it's so interesting. Obviously, we made massive, massive differences inside of BMS and inside of Mastermind come at the end of 2018. And I have done, I think, another... oh my gosh, I think I did another 10 some interviews just this past week for Mastermind.
Oh, nice.
And and I think about three or four of them said, I left Mastermind because I thought, I can do this by myself. I don't need anybody. I got this. It's totally fine. Like, I can do it myself. She goes, and all of them were like, and then I realized as I was sitting there, I had not progressed at all in these 2-3 months that I've been out of Mastermind. I've literally, like, I'm in the same exact place that I was in back in December, and now here I am, and it's freaking April. And that to me was such a massive, like, holy crap kind of thing, just because so often we do think like, I don't need anybody, I can do everything by myself, and you don't realize how much harder it is to be alone.
Well, like, you think about it, like, if you have a group of friends that like are all going somewhere, it makes it easier to be like, I want to go. So you almost have like FOMO. You're like, wait,
if you're going, I'll
go. Yeah. And so it's kind of like that peer pressure. And then when you're alone, I think you're kind of in your head like, what are people gonna think? Can I do this? Can I not?
And here's what it is. When you're alone, it's your pace and only your pace that you're looking at.
Right.
Like, people always know. We always make the joke here that we live in a time warp.
Yeah.
Because one person moves fast, and it's Garrett really who he moves so fucking quick. It's whiplash every day. But he moves so fast, then we move fast, and then because we're moving fast, our students are moving fast.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're on that train, you jump off, and that momentum is gone.
Well, and a couple weeks ago when we were in a training with a girl, and she's like, she kind of broke down a little bit emotionally, and she's like, I know why things like slowed down. She's like, I had a bunch of MBR clients, and then I stopped doing my daily forward, my marketing, and like, I think that's the thing is people like lose momentum because they don't have that community, and then all of a sudden they're like, just like, oh my God. And they know what they did. And that's why they, like, even within inside of our mastermind, people were like, hey, I want to get back in, because they're noticing not only are they stagnant, but like they're losing momentum and they don't have the results, which ultimately, like you said, you're digressing if you're stagnant. So we've had a lot of people just say that as well.
And I have felt that way, but that's always why I knew, like, I feel like if you are wanting to progress to a place, let's say you're on level 3 and you really want to hit level 6, with all due respect, you can't keep hanging out with people that are a level 3. Right. Not saying you shouldn't be friends with them, not saying you can't love them, but I'm just saying you should kind of hang out with who you aspire to be.
Yeah.
And that's why joining BMS for me was so huge, because all of a sudden I was surrounded by people who'd already done the thing that I wanted to do.
Yeah, and it seems less scary too.
For sure, because someone's already done it.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden I became the person that did it, and then students came to me because I was the person that did the thing that they already want to do.
Right. It just kind of pushes you forward faster, I would say. So it's like if you're alone and isolated, I mean, it's honestly like, I think you start to self-doubt and self-sabotage even more. Like, it's important to, that's why people hire coaches, you know what I mean? And Garrett used to always give me shit. He'd be like, you need to like pay somebody to help you figure this out. And I'm like, no, I don't need to pay. I'll YouTube or whatever I need to do. And he'd be like, no, it's different. If you actually pay somebody for coaching, you'll treat it differently. And I believe that, you know what I mean? If you invest in your business, you're more likely to actually do the work and surround yourself with those type of people.
And I feel like once you go at it alone, then that's almost like you said, you kind of start burning it down. But that's when you get into that borderline like victim mentality. Oh, well, I just didn't succeed because it was a scam or they did this, or it's a finger pointing, as opposed to like, oh, wait a minute, I just didn't do the work required to get to the next level, but it's not me, it's them.
Yeah. Yeah, I literally think it like makes you go like super negative and dark.
It's a dark place, guys.
It's a dark place. Don't get isolated. If you find yourself in an isolated situation, find yourself a community, a group, a mentor, a coach, and invest in yourself so that they can really get to the root of the problems. Like literally, like if you hire a professional to be like, hey, this isn't serving you, try this. And it's really hard to just coach yourself and feel isolated. So
you can't coach yourself. It's a bad tunnel vision. You have no outside perspective. You only see what you want to see. So I realized we said there would be 10 things today. I think we're going to do 5 today and then 5 for next week.
I know. I was like, man.
We elaborated. We were excited today. But the last one really is that you lack basic systems and processes, which
we've done podcasts on this before.
Oh, but you know how much I love systems and processes.
You know, I actually am like a little bit like more like sharing and caring. I'm kind of like, woo, free flow. And ultimately, I like that side of me, but ultimately it gets me in trouble too.
Yes, it does.
Because I'm like, I'm like, oh, people will figure it out. It's fine. Oh, everyone's doing the beads correctly. It's fine. And so even like down to how Ani and I were teaching like MBR, I was like, okay, we're putting together a manual right now of like specifically how to teach it, how we put the beads on, how the string are, so that like we're not in a class and I'm like, oh, I put my bead on a little bit different, or you know what I mean? So we have to even create like systems and processes as far as how we're teaching it, because we're expanding next year and we already have more educators on the team, and everything has to be cohesive and everything has to be trained the right way. And so as much as I'm like, oh, people will just figure it out, like that doesn't actually work for my business, and that doesn't really work for any business. If you plan to scale even on a smaller level of like having a team of 4 inside of your salon, ultimately, you have to systematize things, or again, you end up being that person that's getting color, that's getting hair.
You're the jack of all trades.
You're the jack of all trades, and you're literally a slave to your business and behind the chair. So that doesn't really work long term. So you have to delegate and have systems and processes in order to have success in your life and in your business.
And I'm one of those people. I thrive on systems, processes, details.
But everybody does. But certain people like don't. But I nerd out on it. Like you.
Yeah, but I actually like doing it. Like I want to be the person to help put it all together.
Do you like
and to
do
watch
it
flow.
because when things are messy, it gives you anxiety?
Do you know if I walk into a store and even the clothes are all like a shit show, I won't shop there? I will literally turn and leave.
I'm actually the same way too. That's why I can't flea market shop. I can't like I really can't. I hate digging. Like I can't go into.
I want it to be where I want it to be when I want it to be.
Yeah.
But there's something for me, like I like when systems and processes are in play, but I really like creating it and seeing it birth from, like yesterday I had this idea, which I'm not ready to talk about yet, but I have an idea. And the idea when I thought I was
for what?
For the NBR training manual that has me pee pants excited right now, which we'll talk about that another day, not this week. But even thinking of that, I suddenly started smiling. I'm like, oh my God, if we do this and then this and this, and like in my head, it's already created and done. It has an app. Like you don't understand what the NBR training manual has become in my head. But I'm trying not to overwhelm me. So I'm like, step by step, don't tell anyone anything, reel it in. But for me, I just love creating systems and processes so much. Like that's fun for me. There's no stress in it for me that I thrive on that. So if you don't have someone like that on your team, you should probably just get one.
I love creating, and I'm very much like a visionary person.
But you are the artistic side of it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you see that picture I sent you of the communication calendar? You were like, looks great, thumbs down. And for me, I was like, this is a lot. Okay, but all right, this is going to be so good.
I think you like to kind of dissect things and like.
I'm a details person. Yeah, I'm a psycho.
I'm not a details person, but I'm a quick start. I'm like, what are we doing? What's the plan? Where are we going?
And you know what? With you though, once the idea's in your head, that's it. Because all week you've been like, Ani, where are we at with this? I'm like, I already told you that yesterday. You're like, yeah, but where are we at today? I'm like, same place we were at yesterday with the Danielle. You're like, yeah, but now. I'm like,
what this minute?
I'm like, Danielle, you asked me 20 minutes ago. You're like, hey, yeah, I'm asking a question again. And I'm like, honestly, every time that text pops up, I'm like dying laughing. I'm like, I know what this is going to say.
I get obsessive with like, I'm like, did it get done? Did the task get done?
I'm like, Danielle, I literally told you yesterday 3 times it got done. You're like, yeah, but did that part get done? I'm like, that part was part of that part. For sure it got done. She's like, are you sure?
So bottom line, if you are not great with systems and processes, find somebody who is. If you like don't like details, like that's why my salon was kind of a shit show for a minute, is because I am not a super detailed person. So if you, whatever area you need for systems and processes, go and find that. We use MindBody at my salon. Like if you need a new form of like booking clients, then invest in a software. If you need a salon manager, because ultimately, like I think we like don't want to spend the money because it takes away from our like bottom line profit, but it actually costs you your time, which actually costs you your money.
And really, if we didn't have a Crystal or because I feel like Krista and I are both very detail systems oriented, that actually helps your company go farther. Yeah. So don't look at it as like, fuck, they're making me spend money. Actually, without us, the business doesn't grow, but with us, it just grows easier.
Yeah,
and
totally.
That in itself will make you more money.
It affects everybody in my salon. Like if I'm running everything and it doesn't work, then it affects everybody in my salon. So it's not just for me, but it's worth the investment for my team as well. So if you're a business owner out there, I want you to consider that you, like, if you're slaving, if you're the jack of all trades, then you just devalue yourself. Like bottom line is you don't care enough about your time. And when you hear it, it kind of stabs a little bit, but then you're like, yeah, you're fucking right, I don't, because I've been there. And when you get to that place where you're like, wow, I don't value my time. I'm not spending time with my kids. I'm not spending time with my husband. I think I have it all. I think I'm like Superwoman. I think I have it all. You don't. You're saying to yourself, my time's not worth this. I'd rather do all this. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So don't be that person.
When realistically, your time, you're the visionary, I'm the implementer. That's really how this is. And yes, if you are spending all your time in implementing things and details, you lose that visionary part of you.
Because I'm bugged. Like how many people probably like hate doing hair because they're managing too much shit. I have trained so many salon owners like, fuck it, I don't like it anymore. I'm like, but do you still like hair? Do you still like you still like working with people? They're like, I love it. And I'm like, okay,
so you just hate being a salon manager.
So you hate being a salon manager. They're like, I hate owning a salon. I'm like, okay, so that doesn't mean you can't. A salon manager and a salon owner are two different things. What are you doing? And that's when you find out, oh, you hate being a salon manager. Okay, well, cool. Then guess what? You get to spend more money and have somebody do that for you. Oh, you hate doing whatever it is. The only example I can think of is like salon manager because it's like the biggest thing is
because
like
that's
the details.
An artist, a visionary trying to be in an implementer, details, systems, process role.
And then you think you love hair, but really you think like, fuck it, I burned my salon to the ground. I don't want to be a salon owner anymore.
Have you ever seen me in the salon actually doing hair? I don't know if you've ever actually paid attention to me.
Yeah,
I'm a total scatterbrain. I love it. I fucking love it. I'm a scatterbrain. All my systems and processes go out the window. And I'm like, we're going to do this. No, we're not doing that anymore. We might do this. We might do, like,
it's too hard to.
I go pure artist. Yeah. Like, all of my systems and processes go right out the window.
A client yesterday said, and I wasn't even feeling good, and I was doing her hair, and I had, like, everybody we were all working as a team. It was a really good day. And she goes, everybody seems so happy in here. And I was like, you know what? I've worked really hard this last year to create a really enjoyable environment for not only the stylist, but the clients. And it's just cool when people say that because it shows. And it's because I'm like, we need more systems and we need more processes so that the artist can go there and do the art. So even if you're a salon owner, manager, whatever it is, if you're an artist, you need to be able to walk into your space and have that be your happy space so that you can perform the best art on each client.
So, like I said, I realized we said we were going to go over 10 things, but
we're cutting it off.
We were chatty today. So we will come back next week with the very last 5. And until then, guys, thank you very much for listening to Big Money Stylist Podcast. And if you'd like to actually see what we're doing in our lovely mannerisms, because my God, do we talk with our hands, you can actually watch us at bigmoneystylistnow.com. And we'll see